Never Mind the Buzzwords is a community event from Jigsaw Better Business. Taking place bi-monthly, its aim is to build a community of businesses and professionals where you can learn, share and connect. It's about going beyond the jargon and coming away from each session with knowledge, tangible tools, tips, strategies, and hopefully an extended network. Each event is focused either on people or a process. In the process sessions, we talk about how we deliver value in our business. Topics here include lean tools and thinking, operational excellence, sustainability, and digital transformation. In the people sessions, we look beyond the process to the who, discussing topics like leadership, teams, culture, and professional development. Never Mind the Buzzwords isn't just an event that you attend, it's an event to participate in. So get involved in the conversation, put your camera on if you can, share your thoughts, ideas or questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. And don't forget to stay in touch. We have a LinkedIn group where we upload resources and recordings from this community. And if you follow Never Mind the Buzzwords on Eventbrite, you'll be notified whenever we post a new event. Of things, we are talking about how to become a really attractive employer, how to become an employer of choice. And this is obviously so important at the moment. We're hearing a lot about the Great Resignation, but we want to turn that around a little bit and make it the Great Retention, right? So how can we ensure that people are engaged, that they want to work with us, that they want to stay working with us? So again, feel free to pop your camera on. It's great to see a few faces and see a few people that have been back a few times. And feel free to unmute yourself at any stage and just ask any questions or contribute to the conversation. Or you can use the chat function and pop your messages in there. So do bear in mind that we are recording the session, so just share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. So in terms of setting the scene, I suppose, for today, if you are joining the call and you have been experiencing any kind of recruitment problems, you are absolutely not alone. Research that was done at the end of last year showed that 91% of Irish employers have experienced recruitment challenges over the last year. So it might not be too comforting to know, but it might give you a little bit of comfort to know that if you are struggling, you're not alone. In terms of people choosing to voluntarily change jobs, again, this was research with Irish workers by LinkedIn and showed that 63% plan to change jobs this year. So that's a majority of people are thinking, yeah, I want a bit of a change. And similarly, 2/3, about 65% of professionals with careers between 1 to 2 years said they felt confident enough to push for promotion or new job opportunities at work. So it's really quite a candidate-driven market. There's people are basically, deciding to make changes and reevaluate their lives. And in terms of from the employer's perspective, 84% of employers said that they plan to recruit this year. So again, that was from Hayes. It was a recruitment group, Hayes, with 1,500 employers and professionals in Ireland. And they also found that half of Irish employers that were surveyed said that they were experiencing skill shortages and that was impacting their productivity. And nearly 3/4 of them expect that a shortage of suitable applicants to continue in 2022. But in response to those ongoing skill shortages and the recruitment challenges, this research found that employers were 35% more likely to offer a counteroffer when an employee is planning to resign than they used to be pre-pandemic. So we're seeing that employers are now more likely to try and keep the people that they have. They're more likely to try and match the offer. But I suppose as employers, ideally, we don't want to get to that stage of having to counter offer, because if you have someone who's willing to resign, they might kind of have one foot out the door. And if it's just a case of money, they can usually find somewhere that will offer them more money. So that's why it's so important to ensure that we're trying to improve employee engagement as much as possible, as well as paying people fairly, and assessing their salary proactively. But it's just making sure that people are engaged in order to increase retention. So I wanted to hear from all of you, what do you think are the reasons behind this great resignation? Why are people changing jobs? It's also being called the Great Reshuffle. And this has started in 2021, and it's, definitely continuing into this year. But pop into the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. What are your thoughts there, in terms of why people are changing jobs?
I feel, can you hear me there?
Yeah, I can.
Hey, and everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm Elaine from Lonergan Group. Just to hop in here, just to say that I think one of the big reasons why people are looking to change jobs now is that the remote working has freed up. It's made us location independent now. So prior to this, maybe you chose a job because it was an area you wanted to work in, but one of the big factors was that it was easy to commute to, it was close to home, that sort of thing. Now, I mean, I'm based in Selbridge, but like I could look at a job in Cork and say, that's now the job that would be ideal for me. I don't have to think about, oh, I'd have to relocate. How would I uproot my family and all this? I can just go and apply. So I think that has opened up things hugely for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, Elaine. It's really allowed that flexibility. And yeah, Heather put into the chat as well, want better flexibility, maybe working 1 or 2 days a week, or not just the 9 to 5, having to be stuck in that. Salary as well is another one. Like, people are chasing that inflation, people are coping with that. It's not necessarily that people are just being greedy and want more money. It's that the cost of living is going up. So yeah, that's another one. Matthias, I see your hand is up and you popped in about lack of autonomy. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. So I think one of the reasons why people are changing jobs is because of the lack of autonomy. Been reading on LinkedIn on quite a few employees have resigned when they were allowed to work home office, and like Elaine mentioned, didn't have to commute anymore, and they were able to just control the day on their terms, and actually their productivity was increasing. But then when COVID was slowly fading away, they were forced to come back to the office. For some reason, the employers would like to just watch over them all the time, just to have their control. And people decide it's just stupid when they're actually being more productive when working at home, having more autonomy as they resigned.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say there's plenty of people that resonate with that. So yeah, it seems like our priorities and our mindsets are sort of changing. I can see as well, Mary, you've put in need more money to balance that cost or rise of living costs. Absolutely, yeah. Niamh, do you want to come in and say anything there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think like we're looking at the panic situation now where people are moving, and like it's people have the idea in their head that that's it, I've had enough, I'm off. But I think the biggest motivator genuinely behind all of it is the emotional aspect of it coming out of the global pandemic. There was a lot of fear in 2019, 2020. People felt trapped, and now they're free. And that's actually the biggest motivator, I find, genuinely. Yes, they want the hybrid. Yes, they want to be able to work from home. But it's like, I've been stuck with you guys now for the last 2 or 3 years. I'm off. Do you know? And there is a huge aspect of that.
Yeah.
From an employer's perspective, I think people need to remind, it's about people. And people have lost the people-to-people touch over the last couple of years, and people need it. People crave it, even though they might be saying, I want to work remotely, fully from home. I think a hybrid model is probably the best, but I think employers really need to engage with people on a face-to-face basis as much as they can. And if an employee is not willing to do that, they're already gone, no matter what you do, no matter if you counter offer them, whatever, genuinely. I think that's what people need to look at.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, Neve. And yeah, it's kind of like there is that desire for change, and it's sort of a backlog, you know, from the 2 years where people didn't feel comfortable changing. They wanted stability, and now they're going, yeah, I need a bit of a shake up now. And yeah, I see as well in the chat, Ted, you're saying about your career coaching. You're seeing people reevaluating what's important to them. They spend a lot of time out of the office in COVID and had to think about what do they really want exactly. Yeah, I think that's such a huge
It was
point.
almost instant, Julie. I mean, when COVID hit in March 2020, the career coaching side of my own business just went through the roof. And people sitting at home thinking about, you know what, don't really like where I am anymore, don't like doing what I'm doing, I want to do something else. And they also got a taste of being at home and reevaluating what was important to them and seeing what was important to them. And now they're acting upon that. I'm seeing a constant stream of people in that space who are looking to make a move based on that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah, because I suppose any sort of traumatic experience has the potential to do that, which is what it was. You know, we kind of thought the world was ending, and we kind of thought, okay, is this, you know, what I want to be doing with that? So yeah, thanks, Neil, for sharing that. So yeah, I think with lots of different you know, instigators or catalysts for people choosing to change roles, and they want that change. And I suppose then all the reasons that had previously been there, you know, like poor leadership, like when people don't feel like they're recognized, or they feel, you know, made feel like if there's any kind of disrespect or bullying or harassment, like those kind of issues have existed before COVID, and they still do. And a toxic culture as well is something that research has found is actually a huge contributor to attrition. So this was from a sample of large, mainly for-profit companies in the US, and they found that having a toxic culture is the strongest predictor of turnover rates, much more than compensation. So 10 times more than, you know, matters 10 times more than what you pay people, which is interesting, and in a way is good, because that's you know, that's within our control to an extent. You know, we can choose our behavior. And what I mean by toxic culture is, you know, a toxic culture would be disrespectful, not inclusive, unethical, cutthroat, abusive. Those kind of characteristics, if we're seeing any of those, that will make people much more likely to leave. So I suppose it's reflecting and saying, okay, am I making sure that I'm showing consideration and dignity to everyone? Am I promoting equality? Not just kind of tolerating diversity, but really promoting equality and diversity. Thinking about, is there dishonest or unethical practices? Have you seen any kind of backstabbing or bullying or harassing or hostility in the workplace? So if any of those sound familiar to you, hopefully they don't, but if they do, you know, really, really important to address these. That's kind of the first step in terms of, you know, we're talking about retention and attracting talent. That's the ground, the foundation level, really. And so what do we think then in terms of, you know, moving into being an attractive employer? What do you think that potential employees, you know, future, you know, candidates might look for in a company? What kinds of things might you want to include? Elaine, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I feel like definitely in today's scenario now that, you know, we've gone through the whole COVID, people have actually given a lot to their companies. They completely disrupted their home life. They made their living rooms, their offices, their bedrooms, all this sort of thing. So they did a lot of sacrifices to keep the work going. So I think what they're looking for is an increased level of awareness of what they actually did and how they adapted to suit everything, to keep everything going. And I think going forward, if it's within the same company or other companies, the same things that they're looking for is to be recognized, to be viewed as like a whole person that does also has a family life. It's not like that just stops. And that is helped in all areas to grow, to develop, all areas, not just compensation, because we're in work for so many hours a day that no amount of money, I don't think, would compensate you if it was a toxic environment or somewhere that you really didn't feel like you belonged.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And Luke, I can just see your point as well in the chat of clear career progression paths within a company as well. Yeah, people want to be able to know what their future might look like. What are the possibilities? Yeah. Matthias, did you want to come in as well?
Yes, Julie. So I think one of the things potential employees are looking for in a company, that is a good work-life balance, which has been lifted up so many times during COVID, when because of the modern technology, they can actually contact you at all times. And right in Portugal, this actually became such a problem that they decided to implement in the law that after 5 o'clock, employers are no longer allowed to contact the employees unless it's for emergencies.
Yeah, okay. So they've really clamped down on that. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because it's, encroaching in on our time off from work. Yeah. And in Ireland, we brought in the right to switch off, or the right to disconnect. So again, giving people that, just reminding them that they have that right to do so. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And Sarah, I can see you're good to see you there, but ability to express themselves, shape their working environments for the better, and a willingness to disrupt business as usual. I think those are great points. Yeah. So again, kind of ties in with what people were saying there about being a whole person, being seen as not just a worker, kind of saying, what can you do for us, but actually saying, okay, well, how can you, can you contribute, and how can we help you? Niamh, you were saying genuine engagement with the employer, offering a tailored solution to employee. Exactly, again, tapping into the fact that every individual is unique and will have different strengths, weaknesses, desires, everything like that, motivators. Ask the employee what they are looking for, and together you can come up with a plan to achieve that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Sean is saying staying up to date professionally. Yes, so continuous professional development. Number 2, focusing on personal interests and career goals. And number 3, promotional opportunities within roles. Yeah, exactly. So again, few kind of themes coming through of people wanting to develop themselves, progress, and seek new opportunities, and focus on workplace well-being, being valued in the work you do. Ted, you were saying about they're looking for a corporate culture that is aligned with the majority of the candidates' own values. Yeah, so that's being really clear on what is your culture like, what is your values, and communicating that then to potential employees. Sarah, you can see you were doing focus groups on the topic, and you hear that up-to-date technology and conversely big frustration with old-fashioned legacy tech. Okay, that's really interesting as well. So people getting a bit frustrated with, people going, this is the way we've always done things, or
right.
We rely on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's, this is the Instagram, the TikTok generation, and so some of our old-fashioned systems just are not just frustrating, but are positively, demotivating and disappointing. And so, and we also hear, I think, a belief that older colleagues just aren't up to date with tech and therefore couldn't possibly understand, which, as with any gross generalization, is neither true nor untrue. But I think there's a sort of a reverse mentoring possibility here as well for many to help understand how tech can really unleash in ways that we hitherto haven't believed possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And I like what you say there about the opportunity for reverse mentoring. Yeah, and I know myself, I remember, applying for jobs, and they say, oh, you can apply through LinkedIn, and then, oh, here's, you have to fill in this massive form that's telling me all the information that's on your LinkedIn, and sometimes you just go, no, this isn't worth it, so that does those kinds of things. It's like, why are we doing this when there are better ways to do it, when there are ways to streamline, whether it's your work or your selection process or whatever else. It's kind of, people are just going to get frustrated, and they go, I don't have to deal with this, so yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, just about the technology, and yeah, showing that you're willing to kind of move with the times. Yeah. I have a couple of sort of tips in terms of recruiting, and it kind of really ties in with a lot of what we just said there. One thing to be mindful of is just what are competitors doing. So again, like we just said, do they have a really easy to apply, they're getting all the candidates because it's really easy to apply, and they figure out what they're doing or how they're, what kind of jobs they're offering. So just being aware of that. Having the confidence as well in your brand and in the role. I don't kind of think, oh, I can never compete with the bigger organizations if you're a small company. Not everyone wants to work in a big corporate environment. So, figuring out what's your unique selling point, and communicating that confidently to potential employees, to candidates. And being creative as well, like thinking a bit outside the box, because I know there's probably some people on the call who have been really struggling with recruitment. Maybe there's a role that you've been trying to fill for months and you just can't quite get there. It might be a case of going, okay, let's think a little bit outside the box. Maybe we're not going for the usual candidate and the usual methods. Are there any other ways that we could, try and attract and recruit talent? So keeping a talent pipeline as well, like keep a network, keep in touch with people, because there is so much movement in the market. It's great to make sure that you're sustaining a good network of people, because a lot of the jobs come through through those networks. And I would say as well, do have the discussion about the salary. Maybe if not in the job posting, then at least just in the selection process, because like we mentioned, like some people are really feeling that pinch of kind of increased cost of living, and if they go through a whole process of interviews and maybe assessments and everything else, and then at the end you figure out, oh well, I can't afford to do this job because I'm renting in Dublin or whatever else, so I think it is worth being transparent about the salary and about the benefits then, because it's not only about the salary, that number, it's the package that you offer. Thinking about what do people value, right? People, people's health is important to them, their families, their, security for their future, maybe travel is important. So, maybe saying, oh, we give 25 days annual leave, or we have this health insurance, or we contribute to your pension, or whatever it might be, ways that you can show again that you really care about people. Elaine, candidates are feeling really frustrated that no salary is mentioned from the beginning. Yeah, I've had this experience as well, where I was chatting to someone and they said, what are your salary expectations? And I kind of told them, here's what I'm looking for, and they kind of went, oh, okay. And I was like, what are your salary expectations? And they were like, and wouldn't tell me. And I was like, you're in the best position to understand how to value the work. Like if it's a good fit, I'll do the job for whatever price, but like it just like it was a weird thing. I was like, how could I tell you what the salary is? So yeah, it was very frustrating, and I don't work with them, so their process obviously wasn't good enough. But yeah, so no, I do think like showing the benefits as well that you offer, absolutely. And yeah, just thinking of just having a little look into how you are recruiting and trying to see it with fresh eyes, see it, try to make one little change that, you haven't made before, I think could be really beneficial, because again, things are just constantly changing. So it's absolutely worth, taking the time to try and adjust your approach. So that's a little bit about the, attracting employees. But then what about once we have them working with us? I think retaining is obviously so important. The cost of losing an employee, it could be up to say €4,000 for small organizations, or up to 14,000 for larger organizations. Obviously those costs will vary, but that's just what one research paper that I came across. But again, the costs are huge of not keeping your people. So I just came up with this kind of you know, framework, I suppose we could call it, of some of the things that we can do to ensure that we're keeping the best talent. And this really ties in with what a lot of people were mentioning in the chat at the start. So, you know, having a think, say, first of all, if we look at flexible work arrangements, right? People mentioned that they've had a lot of autonomy and flexibility, and to have that taken away sometimes feels wrong. So if your work can be done remotely, a lot of people like that freedom to choose at least some of the time. You know, Niamh, you mentioned about the hybrid model being really effective, or you know, can be really a good way to sort of meet in the middle. And just asking people, you know, what is your appetite for working from home? Or, you know, they might not want to, or they might really want to. So figuring out a kind of compromise. And again, that can be beneficial to the company. You know, you might not have to pay for offices. You might, you know, benefits the environment for people not commuting as much. You know, there can absolutely be benefits. And I know that some people were kind of feeling like, no, we really need to get back into the one environment, but you know, it might be worth rethinking that if possible. If you're feeling like, oh, I want people back in the office because, you know, I can't really trust them to do their work at home, I would kind of say like, okay, well, are they then your best talent that you really need to retain? You know, it's like we're talking about people that you want in your company, people that are engaged and are loyal to your company. If they're actually a person that you feel you can't trust, either you need to kind of reassess that yourself and say, no, I can't trust them. Or if they're not, then that's a kind of performance issue that, you know, if they're not performing, if they're not being watched, then, you know, that's a kind of performance management issue. So I'd recommend just, you know, putting some structures in place to allow that bit of flexibility, you know, and just checking in with people to see what their appetite for that is. Moving up there to continuous learning. Again, we mentioned this in the chat. This was, I saw a survey by LinkedIn, and they were asking about, you know, what are the top perks that you would look for in an employer? And, you know, continuous professional development was the top one. So 47% of people listed that. I would say, you know, it starts with obviously the onboarding, that you know, that it's prioritized then, and employees are given time for it regularly rather than just in the onboarding. And in a HBR article, they also recommend, you know, trying to make it a ritual rather than just something that's a very once-off thing, but actually, you know, is there, you know, time built in for weekly or monthly practice? And coaching as well, that was something that is a really sought after benefit, but it's usually only offered to leaders. So it might be worth even thinking, are you in a position to expand that to other, you know, other employees outside of just the senior leaders? Thinking about promotion opportunities, again, this was something that we mentioned in the chat. You know, it was just about showing people that there is a career path that they can progress, and showing not only, you know, it's not that people always want to be climbing a corporate ladder. It's not, they might not actually want additional responsibility, but even, you know, a lateral career move where they can get that variety and that change that a lot of people are looking for, and, you know, getting that change of pace without having to leave the company to do so. So figuring out, what does this person really want from their work? What part of their work do they love and what part do they hate? And seeing, can we get them to do more of what they love? And again, that will benefit the company because you'll have people who are much more engaged. And then finally, rewards and recognition, you know, celebrating and recognizing that hard work, and celebrating when people, you know, maybe take a smart risk or come up with new ideas, you know, to try something new, even if it doesn't work out well. Because, you know, sometimes people get rewarded, say, oh, you met your sales targets, brilliant. Yeah, that's great. That should be rewarded and recognized. But what about, you know, even if it doesn't work out well, even if the outcome isn't perfect, but they tried, and we want to keep them trying. So it's celebrating the things that you want to see more of, really. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat because I can see a few people coming in there. Yeah, Matthias, I can see you're saying about the salaries, you know, people getting frustrated about seeing, yeah, competitive salary is always a very annoying term. It's like, what is it competing with? It's competing with my bills, you know, like tell me what it is. But let's see what else. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sean, you wouldn't try and sell your car without letting someone know what's the price. Why would it be, you know, we shouldn't be coy about the salary. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. But yeah, and yeah, thanks, Patrick. You're saying, yeah, learn from the wins and the fails, celebrating both, trying to work on those. And yeah, Elaine, you were saying coaching important as opportunity for peer-to-peer learning decreases when you're not all together in the office. Yeah, so making sure that people are taking time to sort of reflect on what they're doing. And yeah, it could even be maybe like a peer coaching, you know, kind of setup, rather than, you know, not every company could afford a coach for every individual, but yeah, even a peer coaching environment could be helpful. So I just popped up this, and I'll be sending out the slides to you. So I just thought I'd kind of create this if you say are in the position where you want to work on these things. You know, you could print this off or put it up on a screen and, you know, pop your sticky notes on it. So like, say, for example, you might think, okay, what am I, you know, how to brainstorm ways of developing this. For continuous learning, you might say, okay, I could get a LinkedIn learning subscription or something similar. Or you might say, okay, I really need to upgrade my onboarding program because I developed it in 2019, which isn't a long time ago, but it's very different. So it's, you know, reviewing it and upgrading it. Or flexible working, you might say, okay, I'm going to survey people. I'm going to, you know, have interviews or focus groups and see what the appetite is for remote working. You could also say, you know, say for promotion opportunities, again, the next time you have a performance review with an employee, ask them about their goals, ask them what they want to be doing more of or less of, seeing is there a way that they can make any lateral career moves within your organization. And rewards and recognition, again, you know, awards for example, this employee really demonstrated our values, our company values, so we're going to, you know, celebrate that. Or, you know, coming up with, and that's something that doesn't really necessarily cost anything, you know, it's just making sure that you're showing them, kind of putting action behind words. Like it's nice to say, yeah, good job, well done, we're happy with that. But even just something, is there any additional kind of thing that you could come to there? And we'll talk a little bit more on that in a minute. But I just want to see, again, from your own perspective, what do you think we could do, anything else that could be done to monitor or improve engagement and retention? Anything that maybe you're doing in your own organization or you're working with clients on? Anything else that we think we could do? Feel free to unmute yourself or pop into the chat.
Well, even something as simple as the team building, like companies would have been big into that before COVID, and that's all gone by the wayside. And now people are kind of at home and they're stuck at home.
Yeah.
I think a big emphasis has to be put back into that in some way, shape, or form. It is an investment, but you could save a lot of money in the long run if you get people back working and talking together. You get that team element back into it. I think that is something that people should look at, or companies should look at.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Niamh. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Elaine, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I just thought what Niamh said was absolutely perfect, because that's what we've experienced in our company, is that a lot of companies are coming to us, and what they're trying to do, dealing with obviously the changed landscape now, that people are all, or a lot of the time, are in their own individual houses. So what some of them have done is they've created a bit of a buzz about something. Like, it could be an event that they're going to do, that it's like a quiz that they're all going to go into on Zoom together. And then what we do is we'll send out a little gift pack that they all open on the same day when the quiz starts, and it might have just a few little, it could be novelty items, it could be, you know, some drink, food, anything like that, that will just create a little bit of a buzz. And everybody, at least they all feel, okay, we're not in the same room, but we're all doing this together. And that has worked out very well. They've got a lot of feedback from it. So yeah, spot on.
Brilliant. Yeah. And you could even tie it in, I suppose, with the kind of continuous learning piece, you know, the kind of team engagement, team building could kind of coincide with like an offsite, you know, training or development day. So yeah, I think that's a really good point about getting people together, whether physically or virtually. Yeah, Ted.
Julia, I think that even take a step back from that. I think there's a huge onus on managers and leaders here in organizations to get to know the people on an individual level. So the people who are working in your team, what motivates and inspires me could be very different from what motivates and inspires you. So it's incumbent upon managers, in my opinion, to get to know their employees, understand what motivates them, what drives them, and where possible to align the opportunities within the business with what they want. That's, in my experience, where you get the greatest motivation. Ken Robinson, he wrote a book called The Element, when you get the alignments of your talents and your passions. And then if you bring the third piece in, called the opportunities within the business, you get what's known as the top model. So the most motivated employees are those who are working on their talents, what they're passionate about, and aligning those within the business organization, the opportunities. That's when you get the win-win in most organizations.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, so maybe even, okay, yeah, I was going to say if you could even pop it into the chat, but someone's just put in finding your element. It's a superb read. So yeah, Ken Robinson. So it's in the chat there.
One of my
so
heroes.
Thanks, Will. Yeah.
Got to meet him in a good convention center there about 3 years ago before he passed away.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah.
Wow. A kid waiting to meet somebody, a pop star, you know, lined up.
Yeah. Getting his autograph.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Patrick, did you want to come in there?
I was just going to say that's amazing. Absolutely, he's a hero of mine as well. I only stumbled upon him sadly a few years ago, and I've just been reading and watching as much as I can on him. He was a genius in his field and with his thinking. So I think everyone stands to gain so much from just exploring what he brought to the world.
Yeah, thanks so much, Patrick. I was just looking there in the chat as well. People saying about, or Sean is saying during lockdown, they had that kind of, what will I do when I get out of lockdown perspective, kind of like a prisoner, and that can generate that anywhere but here attitude to their job. So post-COVID, it's likely that many disgruntled employees could definitely benefit from in-work coaching and career engagement. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Sarah, you're mentioning about it's as people get a bit older, as life expectancy continues to grow, we need to think about the traditional career direction less as a block of 30 years, but rather a series of experiences. Boomerang employees. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, Sarah.
Yeah, it sort of builds on Ted's point, this sort of understanding the why am I doing this? Why am I here? And also having the courage that the job that you have for your team member might not be the job they want to do for life, and sort of having a slightly more expansive view of someone's life and career, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, thank you for sharing those. So lots of different, like I've just mentioned a couple, and then you guys all contributed. There's a lot of different ways that we could be improving engagement and retention. And I think sometimes it is just a case of sitting down and thinking and trying to see things with new eyes and try to see what could we be doing a little bit differently. And like a lot you mentioned, getting to know your people is a huge point, and seeing them as unique individuals rather than just part of a group. So I suppose the kind of to-do list is, seeking feedback from your employees, review your hiring and onboarding process, and take an action to improve employee engagement and well-being. So getting the measurement and the data and then acting on it will be really important if you are to become an employer of choice and someone that really attracts and keeps the best talent. So I wanted to bring in Elaine, who you've been contributing to the conversation, which is great, but I just wanted to bring you in here because you obviously work with Lonergan Corporate Gifts, and they specialize in corporate rewards and gifts and offering personalized services so the companies can recognize and validate the hard work of their employees. And I know you've started kind of touching on some of those things already, but which thank you so much for doing so and for joining us. I was wondering, could you maybe give us a little bit of insight into what kinds of problems, you know, your clients are facing and how you might help solve them?
Yeah, no problem, Raoul. Thanks very much, Julie, and thanks for inviting me to this forum. It's been really interesting listening to the feedback from people and the challenges, and there are actually opportunities out there now too, you know. So first of all, I'll probably just give you a little bit of background to the company that I work for. It's Lonergan Corporate Gifts. It was set up by Louise Lonergan in 1998, so it's 24 years running. So we've got a lot of experience under our belt, and because we deal with many companies, we were in a great position to have an overview of the past 3 years, life and work pre-COVID, life during it, and now hopefully it's life post the very hectic side of COVID. Obviously we've all looked at, and the main big change, the seismic shift, has definitely been the remote working. I mean, I know everybody, I don't think anybody was any different. From the employees' point of view, they struggled to adapt at first. They needed to create a new work routine. They even needed to create a new workspace. So like we were saying, there was bedrooms being shifted, living rooms, you know, they missed their colleagues, both from a social perspective of actually having friends within work, also having the chats around the water cooler, but they also missed, like I said, the peer-to-peer learning, because even if you're sitting in an office and some of your colleagues are having phone calls, you can't but hear what's going on. So you may hear them say something, you think, wow, that's a really good idea. I'll do that the next time I'm speaking to someone. Or after the call, you might say a little bit more, listen, what exactly was that about? What was the issue there? I saw how you dealt with it. So there is peer-to-peer learning going on all the time. And I suppose from a human point of view, everything just seemed more formal, more remote, and lacking the human aspect. Like if you're sitting in an office and you suddenly have an idea or just a question, you could turn to your colleague and say, hey Maria, did you do that last week? What did you do? Whereas if you suddenly have to phone Maria or email her, you're thinking, oh God, I'm making a big deal out of this. No, I'll wait until I have a few things to go back and then I might talk to her. So it sort of stops that natural flow of things. I think from the employers, from companies, they obviously feared that productivity would drop. They did not know, would people work as well remotely as they did in the office? You know, they probably had this nightmare vision of people sitting around watching Netflix and just reading and not doing the work. So they'd no experience of managing a remote workforce, and that is scary. The quantifiables, I think, for companies were easy, the sales figures, the production reports, but it was the intangibles that were so difficult. You couldn't read the temperature of a room or look at the body language in a meeting or hear like things on the grapevine. Such a body's not happy. I think we need to nip this in the bud. We need to start doing something to counteract this. You didn't hear any of these things. So you felt like a bit out of the loop, and there was no opportunities, obviously, for taking people out for a meal after work or organizing a corporate day out, stuff like that. So I think it was very challenging on both sides. Then when we got into it, what happened? Well, I think fantastically that the employees, they really stepped up to the mark. They adopted and they adapted. They adopted new work practices. They created a work routine that worked for them. And I think one of the great things too was we all, I think, became a little bit more open with the struggles that we were having. I think whether it was probably the fact that we weren't nervous about mentioning it, or there was no shame or judgment, because look, we're all going through this together, and it was a common factor that people were maybe suffering a bit from isolation, not having the contact, feeling a bit depressed or whatever it was. So mental health came to the fore, which was, I think, a really good thing, because it was always there, but maybe it just wasn't being discussed and was a little bit taboo. So I think that was really good. From the employer's point of view, I think then they thought, well, how do we sort this out? How do we make sure people are going to work really good? So they organized more virtual meetings and more Zooms and more micromanaging. And unfortunately, I think that just had a complete opposite effect, that people just got so, the Zoom fatigue really slotted in, and they just didn't. But I think also the employers started to become grateful and aware of the sort of challenges and the sacrifices people were making. And I think the results of coming out through this now and the new landscape we're looking at now, I think it's exactly what people were mentioning here earlier on. Employees felt more empowered. They actually felt like, hey, I'm a grown up here. I'm organizing my work life. I don't have a manager coming over checking on me every minute, but I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and I'm actually excelling. Yes, I can also incorporate some day-to-day life into my working day. So yeah, I'll go for a walk with the dogs. I might take a call at the same time. I'm having my coffee break. I'll put a load of washing on. I need to go to the dentist. I'll do that today because I've got a free hour here. So I'll do it here. So even from an employer, it's a great thing that they didn't have to leave work or take a half day off to do that. So they saw the disadvantages of working full time in the office too. And I think they far outweighed the advantages. So you got your commuting time, the stress of that, the cost of commuting and the cost of actually being in an office, and also the home life balance. And they decided we want the best of both worlds. And I think it's like Niamh was saying, that is probably the hybrid model for most people. Most people they want a bit of in the office and all the advantages that brings, but they also want to be able to be at home and continue to do what they were doing. I think the employers then, they got hopefully a welcome surprise in that productivity actually rose. So not only were people doing what they were supposed to be doing, they were excelling at it. And I think they probably were doing that because, we are adults and we know what we need to do, but also the lack of commuting. They were arriving at their desk much fresher. They hadn't faced that commute, if it's on a train or a bus or a car, and the frustrations of that. They weren't having then to jam everything that is their other life before work or after weekends. There was a little bit more symbiotic thing going on. It could integrate in between, and that lessened the stress on them too. The employers, they realize big savings on office space. They realize all that money that they were spending on office space, they didn't need to do that. It could be put into so much more worthwhile things to be doing. They gained confidence in people working remotely, and I think they realized that the hybrid model probably is here to stay. So it's up to employers to actually adapt now to that new way of thinking. I think they saw a new holistic way was needed to motivate and reward when people are not on site. So what you need to do there is to create and grow a corporate culture. I think everybody highlighted the fact that we have a work life and a home life, and home does not stop when you walk in the office door. That became a lot more visible when your office door was actually your sitting room and there was a baby being bounced on a knee or a dog gone ballistic in the corner or something like that. So it really brought to the fore, look, we're a very well-rounded people. We have many aspects to us, and a corporate culture that acknowledges that and uses practical ways to make it happen will definitely win out. They need to walk the walk though, and not just do the talking. The days are long gone when like a framed mission statement will work. If you're saying that you want everything to go well, you have to do that. And like, obviously, some of the bigger companies can do big things like give all the employees a day off or arrange daycare for all the children. But no matter how big or how small your organization, everybody can say thank you in some way. They really can. So the challenge now that we're looking at, like you're saying, the Great Resignation, turn it into the Great Retention. The challenge to attract new talent. All the companies are competing for the same talent. So you need to stand out in that way. There's always going to be some other company offering more money. So you can't really get into that race. The race has to be salary that will be equitable and realistic. But there's always going to be someone who will offer more. And not everybody can compete like that. So what you need to do, I think, is create a corporate culture where current employees actually talk about how great it is to work at your company, because that will definitely get it out there. And people are very interested now, like we're saying, the work-life balance, the good corporate culture. You were mentioning, Julie, then to stop the cost of losing an employee. And it's not only like the money aspect of the administration of finding a new one, you're actually losing all that productivity until that new person gets up to speed. You're also losing all the experience that that person left with, and that can't be replaced with a training session. That takes time. Also, negative impact on staff morale if a bunch of people leave. So many aspects of creating a corporate culture, and the one that obviously I understand most is the areas that my company is involved in, which is reward and recognition, long service awards, and corporate gifts. But the thing that you have to really focus on too is that the gifts that we send on behalf of clients, they're actually a vehicle for delivering a message. And the message always is, I see you, I recognize the contribution that you are making, and I value you. Now, who doesn't want to hear that on some day? You know, it really is. And these are what people are looking for. Now that COVID and working remotely has made us all focus on more the human aspects of work and of life, that's what you do need to hear. So companies come to us sometimes and they say, well, what sort of gifts will we actually send? So the type of gifts, you know, sometimes we just give advice, like maybe it's a gift that the recipient wouldn't buy for themselves, so a treat, or it could be something reusable that they'll use both in work life and outside, like water bottle, travel cup, something like that. You know, it could be personalized with their name on it. And that would be a really nice thing to pick up something and say, hey, they actually know who I am here, you know. And then also what you want to look at too is strategic gifting. So you can look at your company and decide what is the best way if you want to reward and recognize. I think very important is welcome packs. So this is when you do attract new talent. From day one, you are showing them the corporate culture. So you give them their welcome pack. Now, it will probably be, if they're working remotely, it could be a backpack with their laptop, and they're given all the equipment that they need to perform their job well, and also some other supplementary stuff that would be really nice. And at least they get from the very day one, here's a company who is thinking about what the employee needs and is providing it. Also then, say if your busy times, say if you've got a really busy third quarter in the year, and that's when everybody is really working hell for leather, well then probably midway during the second quarter, you send out a gift to motivate and boost and create a bit of buzz. Then hopefully everything goes really well. And then in the fourth quarter, you can send out a gift saying, thank you so much, the results were astounding. So everybody knows that they are being seen and what they do. If you see a lot of staff turnover, maybe you've got stats that maybe after 5 months, 6 months, you see a lot of staff turnover. Then in month 4, you send out a gift to say, look, we're really pleased with what you're doing, if you are, that type of thing. And then Christmas is obviously now the huge one. So we sort of recommend that if you are sending out Christmas gifts, do it at the beginning of December. In that way, it doesn't get lost in the whole festive gift giving thing. And also, hopefully, it'll create some goodwill that will last throughout the whole month of December. I think you touched on it earlier too, that you can reward the cultural values that you want to encourage. I've got a client at the moment, and what they're doing, they've actually got a year-long program. So each month they have highlighted a value that is important to their company. So whether it be bravery, innovation, talent, kindness, and they're rewarding that every month. It's a focus on each of those different things. Excuse me. Also, the other thing about gifting too is it can be quite strategic because there's a lot of social media exposure to it. Pardon me, my throat's a little bit dry.
No worries. Yeah.
So
no,
with the social,
I was going to say, yeah, it sounds like, you know, those kinds of things, it lends itself well to people sharing it, and you get that almost free advertising nearly, like you were saying, about people promoting it and saying,
that's
look
exactly
how much my company values me. Yeah,
I've seen now, we've been sending out gifts lately, and there's a lot of them appearing up on LinkedIn, and the person will say, hey, look why my great employer sent me this, and it will start a sort of a really positive impact on people looking for jobs, because they do use the LinkedIn a lot. And they're looking for companies that have great culture, and that will show it. And then the only other thing I'd say is it's fantastic to see that all this has come to the fore, the wholeness of trying to reward the person and encourage them, motivate them, all this. It's great to see it coming, and there's so many companies that are thinking about doing it and want to do it. I think one thing is important is a lot of it is outsourced to companies like ourselves. And the reason that that's done is with the best will in the world. If it's not your primary job, it will just keep slipping down to the bottom of the to-do list every day. And it can become very arduous to try and find the products, find the company, all this. So outsourcing, I would definitely recommend, obviously. And yeah, so I think, you know, it's just brilliant to see this revolution that is going on. Just finally, we recently partnered with the Great Place to Work organization this year. We were a partner to them and we provided the awards. And that showed us just how many companies are actually going through that accreditation process and want to reach the standards and the level of being a great place to work. So yeah, I think that's it for me from now. Obviously, I'll be happy to talk to anybody afterwards if they need to or want to get in touch. And if anyone's any questions, I'm open to that too. Thanks for the time.
So much, Elaine. Yeah, and we could pop your contact details maybe into the chat or in the.
I'll do that before I go.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. You. And yeah, actually, you know, I really like what you said there about, you know, we have been talking about the kinds of challenges, but showing that there is also a lot of opportunities as well. And you mentioned the Great Place to Work Awards, which kind of ties in a bit with what we're doing next month. So we will be talking with Emma O'Gorman Wall, who is a director with Crown Roofing, and they were awarded Great Place to Work for the last 2 years. And we kind of wanted to just take all this because it's such a big topic and a lot of people are quite interested in it, and move that into a part 2, and going from, you know, taking these kinds of real life experiences basically. So Emma will be sharing some of her insights into, you know, how they built that great place to work, you know, that and it's certainly not easy. She's definitely had, like she was talking about, the various challenges that they've faced, including being in distributed teams, geographically distributed, long before COVID. So they work in teams where they're not physically together. So obviously they kind of were a bit ahead of the curve from what a lot of companies then had to adapt to. But yeah, so we'll be talking all things about, you know, their kind of resilience and their well-being, getting people's input, all kind of building on what we talked about today. So Veronica will pop the link to that into the chat, and you can register for that via Eventbrite if you are interested in continuing on that conversation. I popped up this QR code as well. If you take a picture of that with your phone, you'll be brought to our Eventbrite. You know, you'll see our LinkedIn. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, on Eventbrite, follow Jigsaw Better Business on LinkedIn, you'll kind of be kept in touch. There's also a LinkedIn group where we upload the recordings and everything like that. So I suppose we have a couple of minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they want to say kind of finally as a final question or comment? I think we're just about coming up to 12 o'clock. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Elaine for joining us, and to all of you for contributing to the conversations. There's been really, really good insights shared. Thank you so much for taking the time out as well to develop yourself in your business. You know, I know it can be difficult to find time for that, so well done for doing that. If you do have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them, so feel free to email me or connect on LinkedIn. And I hope to see you next month at on the 15th of June at our next event. But until then, I'll say take care and bye for now.